5 games. That is all that stands between Manchester United and Champions League football. 5 games to secure third place. 5 games to change the financial and competitive reality of this club for the next 12 months. And while those 5 games are still being played, the people responsible for rebuilding this squad are not sitting still. They are moving right now, today. In the last 24 hours alone, Uruguayan left-back who starred against Arsenal in the Champions League quarter-finals has been linked to Old Trafford. A Brighton midfielder with previously agreed personal terms is the subject of a £50 million approach. A Bournemouth Academy product is sitting at the top of the club's scouting wish list after another 90-minute display that had United's observers taking notes in the stands. A Hertha BSC teenager with a release clause of just 10 to 12 million euros has received direct contact from the club. And a Tottenham centre-back, one of the most athletic defenders in the Premier League, has been placed firmly on the radar, regardless of whether Spurs go down or stay up. That is not transfer gossip. That is not speculation built on nothing. That is a recruitment department working across multiple positions, multiple countries, and multiple price ranges, all at the same time. That is what it looks like when a football club is genuinely preparing for a new era, and here is why the urgency is real. Champions League qualification does not just mean prestige. It means more matches. It means a squad that currently works at one level has to suddenly function at a completely different level. You need depth at centre-back. You need energy and quality in midfield. You need competition at left-back. You need attacking options that give the manager real choices. Right now, Manchester United have gaps in all of those areas, and the clock is running. Michael Carrick walked into this job when the club was 7th in the Premier League table. He has dragged them to 3rd. He has done it with organisation, clarity, and a tactical identity that has turned heads across English football. But here is the uncomfortable truth sitting underneath all of that progress. The squad he inherited was not built for him. The players around him were recruited under different ideas, different systems, different managers. And if this club is going to take the next step, whether Carrick stays or someone else comes in, the raw material has to change. That process is starting right now, not in June, not when the window opens, right now. Contacts are being made, scouts are being deployed, valuations are being discussed, personal terms are being revisited. And every single piece of that activity tells a story about where Manchester United are heading and what kind of club they are trying to become. So stay with me, because today we are going through all of it, every name, every position, every confirmed development, and every credible rumour. And by the time we are done, you will understand not just what United are doing this summer, but why they are doing it and what it means for the future of this football club. Let us get into it. The centre-back partnership question here is what is being reported. There are people at United who believe Eden Heaven and Lenny Yoro will develop to be as good a partnership as Arsenal pair Gabriel and William Saliba. But recruitment staff feel an addition is required to cope with the load of Champions League football. Now let me break this down for you. This is a genuinely interesting internal debate. Because on one hand, you have real belief inside the club that these 2 young centre-backs can become elite. That is not just optimism. That is people who watch them in training every single day making that assessment. And when you compare them to Gabriel and Saliba, that is the highest possible standard in English football right now. Arsenal's partnership has been arguably the best in the Premier League for 2 consecutive seasons. So the fact that people inside United are drawing that comparison tells you something important. They genuinely believe in Heaven and Euro. But here is the other side of that. Belief is not enough when you are playing Champions League football. The reality is that a team competing in Europe needs depth at centre-back. You cannot go into a campaign with only 2 senior options at that position. Injuries happen, suspensions happen, the schedule becomes relentless. So the recruitment staff are right to push for an additional signing, even if they believe in the existing partnership. This tells us United are not panicking at the back. They are planning intelligently, and that distinction matters. Chido Obi and the academy pipeline. Here is what is being reported. Scout Natsalt 1 was on assignment watching Chido Obi against Crystal Palace under 18s, and this is what was said, quote, "This might be the most complete performance I have seen from him live. Hold-up play, decision-making, work rate, all top. Everything he has been working on for months has really come together tonight," end quote. Here is how I see this. This is exciting for a very specific reason. Manchester United have struggled for years to develop strikers through their academy system into genuine first-team options. So when a trusted scout uses language like this about a young forward, that matters. The phrase "most complete performance" is key. It suggests this is not just about raw talent or goals scored. It is about the full picture of what a modern striker needs to offer. hold-up play, decision-making, work rate. These are the three things that separate good young strikers from great ones. Any teenager can score goals in youth football. Far fewer can do the dirty work, hold the ball under pressure, make the right decisions quickly, and maintain that work rate for 90 minutes. Chido Obi appears to be doing all of that. And the fact that United scouts are watching this closely tells you something about the long-term planning at the club. They are not just spending money externally. They are keeping a careful eye on what is coming through internally. This is a name to watch very closely over the coming months. Kenneth Eichhorn, the affordable Casemiro successor, here is what is being reported. Manchester United have made contact with Hertha BSC midfielder Kenneth Eichhorn as they step up their search for a long-term successor to Casemiro. The young prospect has a release clause believed to be in the region of 10 to 12 million euros, making him a relatively affordable option. This development signals that United's interest has moved beyond initial scouting and into a more serious phase. Now here is what this really means. This one is fascinating for a completely different reason. Because everything else we are going to talk about today involves large fees, competition from multiple clubs, and serious financial decisions. But Eichhorn represents something different. He represents smart, low-cost recruitment. A release clause of 10 to 12 million euros is in today's market almost nothing for a player United are identifying as a potential long-term midfield anchor. This is not a panic buy. This is not an emergency solution. This is United identifying a young player, doing serious scouting work, and moving in early before the market drives the price up. The fact that contact has been made moves this beyond speculation. When a club of United's size reaches out directly, that is a statement of genuine intent. This is worth watching very carefully. If Eichhorn moves to Old Trafford for around 10 million euros and he develops into a quality midfielder that will look like exceptional business, the risk is low. The potential reward is significant. Mickey van der Ven, the Tottenham situation here, is what is being reported. Mickey van der Ven is on Manchester United's radar ahead of the summer window as they look to strengthen their centre-back options. The 25-year-old is expected to draw interest regardless of whether Tottenham get relegated or not. Let me give you my honest take on this. This is the big one in terms of centre-back targets, and the detail that stands out most is that phrase, regardless of whether Tottenham get relegated or not. That is very important context, because it tells you that United believe they can attract Van der Ven whatever happens with Spurs. If Tottenham go down, clearly the player will want to leave. But even if they stay up, there is a belief that Van der Ven's profile and ambitions may align with a move to Old Trafford. Van der Ven is 25 years old. He is at the peak stage of his development. He is fast, composed, and has shown real quality in the Premier League. For United to have him on their radar, alongside the internal belief in heaven, and Euro tells you they are thinking about a top 4 centre-back group, not just a first-choice pairing. This is still at the radar stage. It is a rumour at this point, but it is a credible and logical one. Franquilino Ju, the striker wildcard, here is what is being reported. Manchester United are showing interest in Midtjylland's 21-year-old striker Franquilino Ju, who has emerged as a promising attacking talent. The young forward is expected to cost upwards of £22 million this summer. United are exploring striker options amid uncertainty surrounding Joshua Zirkzee's long-term future at the club. Franquilino Ju has been identified as a potential addition who could provide fresh energy and depth to their attacking line. Here is the part most people are missing. The most important word in that entire update is uncertainty. Uncertainty surrounding Zirkzee. Because that tells us that United's need in the striking position is directly connected to a decision that has not been made yet about a player already at the club. If Zirkzee stays, Ju becomes a depth option. If Zirkzee leaves, Ju suddenly becomes a much more significant signing. At £22 million or more, this is not a cheap squad filler. This is a real investment in a young striker. What stands out about this target is the profile. 21 years old, playing in a competitive European league, identified for his promising attacking talent. United are not going for a proven veteran here. They are looking at a player with a future, someone who can grow within the squad and potentially become a key contributor over time. Whether this becomes serious depends heavily on what happens with Zirkzee. But the fact that United are actively exploring striker options at all tells you the club is not standing still in any area of the pitch. Gary Neville on Declan Rice and Arsenal. Here is what is being reported. Gary Neville responded to Declan Rice's emotional reaction after Arsenal's game against Manchester City, where Rice was seen saying, "It is not done, it is not done." Neville's response as shared was as follows, Quote, "If I saw Declan Rice saying it is not done to me while being in tears, I would think to myself, yes, you are done." Okay, he was not in tears, but he was like, "It is not done, it is not done." I would be looking at him and think, yes, it is done. End quote. Let me put this in plain terms for you. Now, this screenshot is a little different from the others because it is not directly about Manchester United transfers, but it is absolutely relevant to the wider picture. Because what Gary Neville is describing is the moment Arsenal's title challenge appeared to crack. And for Manchester United, who sit third in the Premier League table with 5 games remaining, the title race result has significant implications. If Manchester City continue to close the gap on Arsenal, it creates even more chaos at the top of the table. United, sitting in third, need to focus on their own position. Champions League qualification is the priority, but watching Arsenal struggle tells you something about the pressure that is building across the entire top of the Premier League. Neville's commentary is sharp and accurate as always. He is reading the emotion of the moment and translating it into cold analysis, and his point is a valid one. When you are visibly reacting like that on the pitch, you are showing the mental weight you are carrying, and that weight can be the difference in a title race. If you are finding this analysis valuable, please hit that subscribe button right now. The Emma United Analyst channel is built for supporters who want the real picture, not just the headlines. Subscribe and you will never miss a breakdown like this one. Maxi Araujo from Sporting CP, the left-back question. Let us talk about Manchester United's left-back situation, because it is more complicated than it might seem on the surface. Luke Shaw is 30 years old. He has been one of the most injury-prone players at the club for several seasons now. At his best, he is a genuinely elite left-back. But the club cannot build their plans around a player who regularly misses significant portions of the season. That is the reality. Particularly with Champions League football coming next season, which brings a heavier schedule and demands consistent depth in every position. So the search for a left-back who can provide real competition, or even eventually replace Shaw, is entirely logical, and the name that has now emerged is Maxi Araujo from Sporting CP. Here is what we know. Araujo is a Uruguayan left-back who joined Sporting CP in August 2014, which means he did not play under Ruben Amorim during the former manager's time in Lisbon. He is not an Amorim recommendation, in other words. He is a player United have identified on merit. This season he has been among Sporting's standout performers in the Champions League. They reached the quarter-finals before being knocked out by Arsenal. So this is a player who has been tested at a high level in European competition. He has scored 6 goals and recorded 4 assists so far this season. For a left-back, those numbers represent genuine attacking contribution. Now here is where it gets complex. Araujo is not only on United's radar, he is also attracting interest from Manchester City. There are also clubs in Serie A, specifically Juventus and Napoli, though the financial limitations of those clubs may prevent them from completing a deal. Atletico Madrid are also in the picture, and the fact that Diego Simeone's club is interested tells you something important. Simeone built his teams around intensity, pressing, and relentless work rate. If he wants Araujo, it confirms the player has the physical and mental qualities to perform at the highest level of demanding football. The fee Sporting CP are expected to demand sits between £34 million and £43 million. That is a wide range which suggests negotiations have not yet reached a concrete stage, but it gives United a clear idea of what they are looking at financially. There is also a potential Arsenal angle here. The situation is further complicated by reports suggesting Arsenal could move for Araujo if Miles Lewis-Skelly departs the Emirates. So this could potentially become a 3-way battle between United, City and Arsenal for the same player. The evidence suggests United need to move with real intention if Araujo is truly their priority. With this level of competition from clubs of similar or greater resources, a slow approach risks losing the player entirely. But there is also an important question about United's other options. They have been linked with Miles Lewis-Skelly at Arsenal and Lewis Hall at Newcastle. Both of those players are Premier League based, which makes due diligence easier. Araujo is a known quantity in European football, but would represent a different kind of recruitment. The decision United make here will tell us a lot about the direction the club is heading in terms of their transfer philosophy. Carlos Baleba from Brighton, the midfield priority. Now we move into what is clearly the most pressing area of United's summer planning. The midfield. Casemiro is leaving at the end of this season. That has been confirmed, and Manuel Ugarte has not fully convinced in the time he has been at the club. On top of that, Ugarte himself is attracting interest from Juventus and Ajax, which means there is a real possibility United could be rebuilding significant portions of their midfield in a single window. Against that backdrop, the interest in Brighton's Carlos Baleba makes complete sense. Here is what we know. United are weighing up an offer of around £50 million for the 22-year-old Cameroonian midfielder. The history here is important. United broadly agreed personal terms with Baleba during an earlier pursuit, which means the relationship between the player and the club has already been established to some degree. That is significant. It is much easier to complete a deal when personal terms have already been discussed and broadly accepted. At the time of that earlier pursuit, Brighton were demanding £100 million, comparable, as has been noted, to what Chelsea paid for Moses Caicedo back in the summer of 2023. Over the summer that followed, United were prepared to go up to £75 million. Now, the club appear to be willing to go no higher than £50 million. That is a substantial drop in United's ceiling, and it creates an obvious tension. Brighton are unlikely to welcome a £50 million offer for a player they previously valued at £100 million. The question is whether Brighton's valuation has softened given that Baleba has not been a first-choice starter this season. He has been substituted on 15 occasions and has only played the full 90 minutes 3 times throughout the campaign. However, his display in Brighton's 3-0 win over Chelsea recently was described as commendable, and United closely monitored his performances at this year's Africa Cup of Nations, where he featured 5 times and was a key figure for Cameroon as they reached the quarter-finals before losing to hosts Morocco. So the picture of Baleba is one of a player with undoubted quality and international pedigree who has had a stop-start domestic season. United see value at £50 million. Brighton see something closer to £100 million. The negotiation that lies ahead is going to be difficult. United are also thought to be targeting 2 central midfield signings, not just one. And a third may be needed if Ugarte departs. The other names that have been linked with United include Adam Wharton from Crystal Palace, Elliot Anderson from Nottingham Forest, and the Newcastle pair of Sandro Tonali and Bruno Guimaraes. None of these would come at a bargain price. Each represents a significant financial commitment. The reality for the club is that the midfield rebuild this summer is the single biggest challenge in the transfer window. Getting it right, especially with Champions League football next season, is essential. Getting it wrong could set the team back considerably. There is also one final complication worth noting. All of these transfer decisions could be influenced by who is in the dugout at Old Trafford come the end of the season. Michael Carrick has taken the club from 7th to 3rd since taking over. He has been exceptional, but a decision on his long-term future has not yet been made, and different managers have different requirements from their midfielders. The club needs to resolve the managerial situation alongside the transfer planning or risk a situation where new signings do not suit the eventual permanent manager's system. Alex Scott from Bournemouth, the smart scouting mission. And now we come to one of the more intelligent pieces of recruitment work that has been happening quietly behind the scenes. Manchester United have been keeping a close eye on Bournemouth midfielder Alex Scott. The 22-year-old is having the best season of his career. And United scouts have been watching him with real intent, impressed by his attitude and his ball-carrying ability in particular. This is not casual monitoring. The evidence suggests this is a focused scouting mission with Scott towards the top of the club's midfield wish list. The fact that scouts were specifically assigned to watch him against Leeds United in Bournemouth's 2-2 draw tells you this has moved beyond the early awareness stage. Now let us look at what Scott actually did in that game, because the numbers matter. He played the full 90 minutes. He earned a rating of 7.3 from SofaScore. His passing accuracy was 85%. He completed 2 key passes. He completed 100% of his dribble attempts. Defensively, he made 8 defensive contributions, won exactly half of his 12 duels, and made 4 interceptions. For a midfielder who is being considered as a potential Casemiro replacement, those defensive numbers are particularly relevant. 4 interceptions in a single game is a strong return. It suggests he reads the game well and positions himself intelligently. The dribble completion rate of 100% also tells you he is decisive and efficient on the ball, not a player who forces things or takes unnecessary risks. Now here is the tactical detail that makes this potential signing make sense on a deeper level. United under Michael Carrick have been playing a 4-2-3-1 shape. Kobbie Mainoo has predominantly operated on the left side of that midfield double pivot with Casemiro to his right. When Casemiro departs, United need someone who can play on the right side of that pairing. In Bournemouth's system, Alex Scott has lined up on the right of a 4-2-3-1 for most of this season. That is not a coincidence when it comes to United's interest. Scott already knows the role. He already has the positional habits that United need. The transition from Bournemouth to Old Trafford, in terms of what would be asked of him positionally, would not be a major adjustment. That is smart recruitment. Finding a player who not only has the technical and physical qualities you need, but already plays in the exact position and shape you use, is much more efficient than trying to repurpose someone. The situation is that Scott appears to be one of the cleanest positional fits United have identified in the midfield market this summer. Whether the fee Bournemouth demand is realistic for the club remains to be seen, but the logic of the signing is clear, and the scouting work being done suggests United are taking this seriously, bringing it all together. So what does the full picture look like when we stand back and take it all in? Manchester United are approaching this summer with a clear and systematic approach. They are addressing multiple positions at once. They are scouting players across Europe and the Premier League. They are looking at expensive established targets and affordable long-term bets in equal measure. In goal and at centre-back, the internal belief in Eden Heaven and Lenny Yoro is real. But the club are smart enough to know that belief alone does not win trophies. They need depth. Mickey van der Ven from Tottenham has been identified as a potential addition. At 25 years old, van der Ven would add quality and experience to a young backline. In midfield, the work is the most extensive and the most urgent. Casemiro is leaving. Ugarte may follow. United need one, possibly two, potentially three midfield signings. Carlos Baleba remains a genuine target, but the gap between United's valuation and Brighton's will need to be bridged. Alex Scott represents a tactically intelligent option who already knows the role United need filled. Kenneth Eichhorn offers a low-cost, long-term option. And names like Anderson, Wharton, Tonali and Guimaraes remain in the background as alternatives or additions. At left-back, Maxi Araujo is the emerging name. His Champions League performances this season, his versatility and his goal and assist numbers make him an attractive option. But United will face serious competition from City, potentially Arsenal, and clubs in Spain and Italy. The £34 to £43 million fee is not insurmountable, but the competition is real. In attack, there is uncertainty around Xerxes, and that uncertainty is driving the interest in Franquilino Ju from Midtjylland. At around £22 million, it is a relatively modest investment in a 21-year-old with genuine potential. And in the academy, Chido Obi is developing at a rate that has scouts genuinely excited. That is a long-term asset, not an immediate solution, but it is encouraging to see the pipeline producing talent that turns heads. The bigger question hovering over all of this is Michael Carrick. He has transformed this club since taking over. He has hauled them from 7th to 3rd. He has done it playing attractive, organised football with a clear tactical identity. But a final decision on whether he becomes the permanent manager has not yet been made. That decision needs to come soon. Because every transfer conversation, every recruitment plan, every tactical setup for next season is built on an assumption about who will be in charge. Clarity on that question will unlock everything else. The situation is that Manchester United are moving in the right direction. The evidence suggests a club that is planning carefully, thinking clearly, and preparing seriously for Champions League football. Whether the window itself delivers on that planning is the next question, and we will be here every step of the way to analyse exactly that. Thank you for watching, Emma United Analyst. If you found this breakdown valuable, please subscribe right now and leave a comment below telling me which signing you think United need most this summer. I read every single comment, and I will see you in the next one.